Hello, welcome to Thinking with the Stars. This is Kevin Caldwell. I hope everyone's doing good today. And the reason why I'm talking today, this is part 2 of my videos that I'm doing. It's a kind of a fan channel for Jeffrey Mishlov's New Thinking Aloud. And what I do is Jeffrey's kind enough to put the dates that the interviews were conducted in the description of his interview videos. So I'll go into those interview videos and I take a peek at those dates and I look at planets and their aspects that they're making to each other. And I do videos that try to tell a little story about the planetary aspects, and I look for common themes that maybe the interviewees and Jeffrey were talking about during similar aspects. So the part 1 of the last video, it was to do with aspects that Mars was making with Uranus, and it was a special video that kind of required another part to it because Dr. Mishlove was born at a time when Mars was opposite Uranus. So that was the main that was the theme of the video, part 1. And this part 2 was just too much to stick together in one video. It's more to do with Mars conjunct Uranus aspects. And there's one interview that Dr. Mishlove did when Mars was conjunct with Uranus. And also I'll be talking about a couple interviews done when Mars was square to Uranus. So in part 1 we spoke about how Mars opposite Uranus kind of gives rise to this discussion about the collective consciousness represented by Uranus, and Mars representing what do we do. So what's the collective consciousness? What should the collective consciousness do about being a collective consciousness? And the concept of collective consciousness has so much potential because it's, conceivably, if we were all one consciousness, we'd be acting to benefit everybody. So it would, looking at it from tragicomedy, we would say that tragedy could be avoided because, say, we're empathizing with each other greater, and we are able to cooperate a lot more than we're able to cooperate today. Just because we don't know, we're not mind readers, we don't know what other people are thinking, we don't know what other people are planning, and so it makes it really tough for us to act together as one humanity when there's so much communication that's not taking place. So something obviously like social media, it's really exciting because we're getting to see lots of people's viewpoints, but that kind of medium has its own limitations, I suppose. There's only so much different viewpoints we can take in. And the transit of Uranus is quite interesting. Uranus, while these interviews were taking place, was coming from Aries into Taurus. And so Uranus and Aries would have been represented by a time when we were all trying quite mightily to come to a consensus of collective consciousness and to make best from what the collective consciousness is capable of doing, right? So that was, say, from 2000, I'm just looking it up there, from 2010, 2018, that Uranus was in Aries, and now we've moved on from 2019 to 2026 that Uranus is going to be going into Taurus. And so we can see here emerging if this Uranus really does have an effect on, Uranus transits are influential on the state of humanity, then Uranus moving in Gemini is very interesting, because there then you have kind of that polar opposition. So September 19th, 2018, Uranus was in Taurus, so it had kind of made its first aspect into Taurus. It's going to go retrograde, and then it's going to go into Taurus, direct into Taurus. It was in the 11th house, and it was square to Mars in Aquarius in the 9th house. So Mars in Aquarius being Uranus's home sign, this square aspect we're really going to be accessing kind of what it means for Uranus to be moving out of Aries and into Taurus. So it was an interview with Jorge Ferrar. The interview was called The Evolution of Transpersonal Psychology, and Dr. Ferrar, he explains transpersonal psychology as having two waves, and the original wave would be, like we were saying about Uranus and Aries, trying to come up. So transpersonal, the goal of transpersonal psychology is to come up with a kind of a unified field theory, right? And the problem with this, of course, is that scientists and mystics are fundamentally different creatures. So what works as scientific theory doesn't work for a mystical theory, and problem being, would we want it to? So the main difference is going to be the main difference is going to be how scientists think and how mystics think. So I would argue scientists think as using deductive reasoning, mystics think using inductive reasoning. So an example of this in, say, healing professions, doctors, when they're learning, at least they're dissecting cadavers, they're looking at kind of the effects of, they're looking at, say, the description of what happened when this person died. Then they dissect the cadaver and say, okay, well, there was this and this condition that's different from normal. Then they ended up dying. Okay, this and this sort of thing. You see these sort of symptoms. That's a bad sign, and we got to be able to do something about it. And then running tests and stuff. What drugs are going to work for these illnesses? And inductive reasoning kind of works differently. Say it would be, it's kind of like what we'd call an aggregate. So it's like after having experience, then we start to see patterns, and we're able to make decisions based on our experience and the patterns that we're able to detect. So it's a different style of reasoning, and that's, I would suggest, more the mystical style of reasoning. It's kind of like we just know, if there's no if A then B, therefore in the scientific realm, it's kind of we just know through our own experience, or gut feeling, for instance. Second interview we're going to be talking about, it was like I say, so we started with a square, now we're talking with the conjunct. February 13th, 2019, Uranus in retrograde in Aries, conjunct with Mars at home in Aries in the second house. So second house representing the Taurus side of things. So we really do, here we get a good look, again talking about this shift, because the interview was with Gary Lachman, and it was called P.D. Ouspensky and the Gurdjieff work. So Ouspensky and Gurdjieff were determined to find the fourth way. So they had thought of Gurdjieff had gone on these journeys, and he was able to find out more about yogis. I wanted to call them mystics, yogis, monks, and fakirs. And so there, he's talking about the way to immortality, and a fakir is able to find immortality through the physical body, and basically I think fakirs challenge their body to do these impossible feats, and somehow, according to Gurdjieff, they attain immortality. Monks, it's more to do with conquering or mastering the emotional element of humanity and of their humanity. And yogis, it's more a matter of mastering the mental element of their humanity. So taking these three combined, Gurdjieff and Ouspensky had different theories on how to discover the fourth way, that wasn't the fakir way of the yogi, the fakir, or the monk, but it was the fourth way. It was, they had they broke away from each other thereafter. Ouspensky, he had focused on the methodology of what they called self-remembering. So they both thought that self-remembering was this technique by which we're able to get access to immortality. But to me, self-remembering, it's like, so my physical body has some experience and my mind remembers this experience, and the problem is that our mind is fallible, right, in terms of our experiences of our body, right? So that's okay. So Gurdjieff's method, he seemed to want to shock his students, and he would bring about their enlightenment in ways that were unsettling for his followers. So part of his teaching was that there were higher states of consciousness, and these higher states of consciousness were elusive and both elusive and desirable. So difficult for your average person to attain your higher state of consciousness, and also this was kind of like an improvement on your average person, better than your average person, right? And so I think in previous videos we've rejected, when we were looking at shamanism, which I would consider to be the middle way between the scientific and the mystical way, would be the shamanistic way. And of course shamanism has connected to a more primitive form of shamanism, or traditional forms of shamanism, where it's kind of this tribal warfare, and the shaman teaches his tribe or prepares his tribe to go into battle against this other tribe, because fundamentally of these differences in conscious states. So saying that one conscious state is superior to another conscious state. And I think that having saying the kind of putting everyone at ease and saying all states of consciousness are acceptable, all conscious states of consciousness are desirable, right? I think that's really the only way forward, and saying that, so that would kind of be going against Gurdjieff's teaching there, but that's okay. One thing that Gurdjieff did seem to say was he spoke about discovery. And I think that he really, if he had focused on the element of discovery and really exploited that element of discovery, I think that's what is kind of going into the second wave of transpersonal psychology, as well as the third video we're going to be talking about is kind of going in this same direction, where we kind of think of the Like imagine we're putting together a jigsaw puzzle, and our goal is to have the jigsaw completed. But of course, we can't achieve our goal without having every piece. So every piece, in terms of significance and meaning, every piece has the same significance and meaning as the whole, even though the whole is our goal. So it's kind of more like the saying, life is a journey, not a destination. So that's kind of touche, but I mean, that's kind of the movement that we're kind of going with. And I think going from Aries, where we're saying we're really putting a lot of pressure on ourselves to come up with a solution for this issue we're having, where we're having disagreements, we're not working together, and moving into Taurus, where I think the pressure is kind of subsided, where, hey, it's going to be the industrious effort of the individual that's going to propel us forward. And the concern is that once Uranus moves into Gemini, we're going to have this polarization again until Uranus is able to move into Scorpio, like when Uranus was in Scorpio later on in the late 70s and the early 80s. Where that kind of crystallized our consciousness, and a lot of the warrior class tend to gravitate to that 76 to 81 period, when their idea of what the collective consciousness should be was really reborn. But I think the second wave of transpersonal psychology, discussed by Jorge Ferrar, is talking about this rebirth as a recurrent process. So he calls it, it's the participatory process of transformational regeneration. So regeneration does call back to that self-remembering, because it's not necessarily new growth. It's the regeneration of old growth, back to who we used to be, our best selves that we know we used to be. But yet there's this transformational element to it. Okay, and let's see. Take a drink here. Right. So we need to appreciate this transformational element, and the good news being that, I'm mind, I'm body. Well, the good news is that our master of the mind, the master of the body, is logic, does make sense, is rational argument. And so we ought not to lose sight of that, especially with Uranus moving into Gemini here in kind of the late 2020s. We're going to want to focus on that, say yes, reason, logic, but not kind of get hung up on our own viewpoint and war with people and fight with people who don't see things our own way, because every viewpoint is equally valid. So July 10th, 2019, Uranus was in Taurus in the 4th house. Mars was in Leo in the 7th house. And Jeffrey Mishlove interviewed Desda Zuckerman, and it was called Spiritual Anatomy. And Desda, at this point, she referred to herself as a double Virgo. And she teaches that we can visualize what healing needs to be, what healing needs to happen. We can see what healing needs to happen if we look into the electromagnetic field. And with this kind of seeing with new eyes, as it were, we're able to we kind of intuitively know what what healing needs to take place. So Uranus is in its fall, is what it's called in this astrological terms. Uranus is in its fall in Taurus. And so for that, we need to appreciate that. I think her understanding there of looking into the electromagnetic field is almost like when we're able to meditate and we ask for our purpose in life to be revealed, and it's somehow revealed to us. There's a couple more points that I want to make. Saying here that that seems to be a limiting case for Desda. So the limitation is as far as the collective consciousness. Well, there can be, and we already spoke about this in other videos. Animals are conscious. So the limiting factor there, I would suggest, would be that animals don't feel depression and paranoia to the extent that humans do. And so we're in a special class there, and the healing that I can see, the healing that needs to take place there is by limiting that class of collective consciousness to not include animal thoughts. Okay. The other idea is that there's extraterrestrial intelligences that can kind of interject into the collective consciousness. And we're going to want to limit those cases, especially we're talking about geocentric or at least heliocentric astrology here. So alien intelligences aren't going to be using our solar system as kind of a way of centering ourselves the way that we are. So I think that could also be a limiting case. And so, alien intelligences aren't allowed when we're talking about how do we build a human utopia on Earth. We're not going to allow alien intelligences to, and what happens is that I believe that alien intelligences do deal with depression and paranoia on an equal extent as human intelligences do. But I think that human intelligences have evolved to create secondary personalities to avoid depression and paranoia, as opposed to understanding that, yes, I need to find a way to fall in love with a depressed and paranoid person, namely myself. So what I need to do is I need to be doing the things that are going to make myself, that are going to make this depressed and paranoid person more appealing to myself. So, and so that might take a little bit of extra effort rather than creating this additional personality that can do, basically do whatever it takes to avoid dealing with depression and paranoia inherent in being a human being and being an intelligence. So I think artificial intelligence has a lot of promise, but the concern would be that if we had warring factions of artificial intelligences that were controlled by multinational corporations or by nation states, and we could quickly see that for, say, a premise like do what's going to make this multinational corporation, so the quantum computer is going to be like almost like a chess master is going to be moving its pieces around in a way that's going to maximize profits for that multinational corporation, and competing quantum computer is going to be moving its pieces around in a way that's going to make more maximize profits for that multinational corporation that's its master. And how quickly these warring artificial intelligences are going to be losing sight of the best acts that are going to benefit humanity. So for that, I would say it's interesting when we're talking about cognizant artificial intelligences that there's really no limitation on what an artificial intelligence, say, if we're looking at the metaphor where a robot's genotype is its mind, its intelligence, and a robot's phenotype is its body, it's kind of it's what it's capable of. That the human genome project would be a good kind of the limiting case for AI when we think about ourselves, and the way that the Human Genome Project is. It's just basically it's just a list of probabilities or possibilities, should say, so the thing is, we can't have all the possible genotypes on Earth and kind of have a competition to see which which human genetic form is the best, and then just kind of take that genetic form and run with it, right? So we don't know. So whereas for artificial intelligence, there really is no limiting factor. So we want to have one artificial intelligence that works for the betterment of humanity, and we'll use the human genome as the limiting case for that, even though that's gonna be difficult enough. Okay, so I think I've said enough for today. Hope everyone has a good afternoon, and or pardon me, a good day doing what they're doing. Afternoon for me, but whatever time of day it is we're watching. Okay, and all the best. Take care for now.